Now, I have done many mistakes in my Japanese learning journey, but that's alright, because they've kind of gotten me to where I am right now. And while I think the most important part in learning a new skill isn't so much about the small details and efficiency, but rather about just getting started, I do think there's great value in like a heads up, if you will, to avoid big mistakes that cost you a lot of time. Now, I assume you have already decided to learn Japanese, but if you're not so sure yet and you're still in the kind of exploration phase, I do recommend another video of mine that goes more in depth into what to do before learning a new skill. But now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the good stuff. In my opinion, everyone should start with learning hiragana and katakana, which are already 2 out of the 3 alphabets in Japanese. And that's how they look like. Now, don't worry, they might seem intimidating, but they are actually not so bad. Fortunately, both hiragana and katakana are phonetic, meaning that one character resembles one sound, which, spoiler alert, isn't the same way in the 3rd alphabet. As for my recommendation for learning hiragana and katakana, I really think you should make use of mnemonics. And I don't think it matters too much if you think of them on your own or copy someone else's stories on the internet. In case you don't want to think of them on your own, I do have a video of example stories. Step 2 is getting a textbook. And there's different ones. I've used Genki, it's the most popular one. Tobira is also a very popular one, but Genki worked perfectly fine for me. Basically, it's a whole beginner course to Japanese, and it will give you all the tools you need to get started. That being said, Genki is great, but it's still not perfect. And there's definitely a few points I would explain differently. And maybe a few that actually do more harm than good. For the specific grammar points I don't agree with, I do have another video that goes in much more detail. After every grammar lesson, the textbook gives you a practice section. And those are really the bread and butter of language learning. And because they are so pivotal, I actually do recommend you get the workbook as well, which is filled with extra exercises. Fast forward however long you needed to finish Genki 1. What now? You're done. Workbook, textbook and all. You'll be able to form sentences, and you've learned around 700 words. Now, it actually quite surprised me how complex the sentences were I was able to form after finishing the book. Don't get me wrong though, there's still a lot of ground to cover when it comes to grammar. And when we come to the next stage, which is immersion, you're going to find it out the hard way. A little side note. This is an example page out of Genki 1. And as you can see, there's vocabulary on the left side and the English on the right side. In the middle, there's some kanji. I do not recommend you learn kanji out of Genki 1. It's just very inefficient, I think, and there's books that cover kanji separately. You have a few options now. First, I'll tell you what I did, and then I'll tell you the alternatives. Now, I focused on immersion. My main app was Today news articles, so reading, and then anime, which was pretty much a combination of all of them. It was reading of subtitles and then also listening. I've also had some italki lessons with a teacher, which covers obviously the last part, speaking. Now, I do think input is much more important than output, but I don't think it hurts to learn speaking the language early on either. The only downside is it can become quite pricey depending on the teacher you choose. Of course, you don't need to copy my resources that I used for immersion. I do recommend Today articles though, because they are just a very great way to get you into reading fast. Italki is another thing that you can do, but you don't have to do yet. And anime, either you like anime or you don't. But you can watch dramas or listen to a podcast or whatever you want. The choice is yours, really. Let's get to the alternatives I was talking about before. Obviously, you can start with Genki 2. There's a continuation of Genki 1, it's called Genki 2. It's practically the same thing, just more grammar and more vocabulary. And if you have enough time, you can do Genki 2 and the immersion part at the same time. Now, if you're a student like me, or you work or have family or whatever you have to do and you don't have time for both, I do recommend on focusing on one. And if you do focus on one, I do recommend you do some immersion before Genki 2. You're probably thinking, what about the third alphabet, kanji? This guy's been telling me to skip it in Genki 1, to immerse, to read, to listen, to maybe even start Genki 2. But you're right. It is time to start learning some kanji. I learned kanji using the book Remembering the Kanji by James Hasig. I think it's the most effective method, but it's also quite a commitment. Now, I had to reference so many other videos, but that would just be too much for today. For kanji, I'm going to do a separate one. As for the timing, what I said here is enough. After Genki 1, I think it's time to learn kanji. Now, using what tool, that's for the other video. So guys, this is as far as my recommendations are gonna go. Because honestly, I'm not further along either. I've finished Genki 1, I've done quite a lot of immersion, I've watched some anime, and I'm halfway through it remembering the kanji. And that's it. The following videos are just going to be progress videos that you can tune into if you're interested. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.